I've got a set of hand warmer grips that I'm going to be installing on my Ariens Deluxe 24 snowblower today. I'm offering this video up just for entertainment purposes. I'm not an expert or affiliated with Ariens, so I could make a mistake. If you're going to be doing this job yourself, you should follow all of the instructions that come with the hand warmer kit. Now it's only about 30 degrees out here today, and we're going to be working with some two-part epoxy that really requires warmer temperatures. So I'm going to move my machine down into my heated cellar and do the job there. Before I get started, I want to pull the safety key and the spark plug wire just to make sure there's no chance the machine could start up while I'm doing this job. One of the first things I need to do is get the old grips off. I've got this thin tool that I'm going to use to kind of insert in underneath the old grip. I can use this to kind of lift up and make a little gap there. And then once I have a gap in there, I can squirt this Windex underneath to kind of get in here and loosen everything up. Then I can rotate the tool around to get Windex all around the grip. Once I get enough in there, I'm able to kind of spin this and work it off of the handlebar. Next, I need to remove this wiring harness. You can see it unplugs right here. Next, I'll get this push pin pulled out of the machine, and I'll use a screwdriver to kind of help. Now, I don't really need to save this, so I could cut it, but I'd rather kind of poke it out of here if I can. There are also a couple of zip ties up along the handle that'll need to be clipped and removed. There's also a connector up under the handlebar right behind the LED headlight that needs to be removed. I'll need to use a screwdriver to kind of undo this clip to get it off of here. And then I should be able to pull this connector straight out of here. The next thing I need to do is drill a hole for the switch. According to the instructions, for my style of control panel, the switch should be mounted here just above this bolt. Before I drill the hole in this location, I'm going to check underneath the control panel and make sure there are no obstructions under there or anything that I might damage if I drill into it. I'll have to be a little bit careful of this shaft, but otherwise than that, I think everything looks pretty clear. So I'm going to locate the switch about halfway between this bolt hole and the crease in the metal. I'll use a punch to make a dimple to help prevent the drill from wandering around. Now I'm going to drill a small pilot hole. Next, I'll bring in my step bit and open up the diameter of the hole to 1/2 inch. I've got some blue tape on my bit to mark the 1/2 inch mark so that I don't go too far and make the hole too big. So after drilling the hole, some of the plastic from the control panel is kind of melted up, so I'll just use a razor knife to trim that back. So now I'll grab the switch out of the hardware kit. I'll leave the tooth washer on the bottom. So now I'll put the switch underneath the control panel up through the hole. So I'm going to orient the switch so that the groove in the switch body is facing down towards the bolt, so that the toggle goes up and down like that. Okay, and then I'll install the nut. I'll hold the switch body from underneath with one hand and then use a 9/16 inch wrench to tighten this up the rest of the way. Now, I want this tight enough so that it's not going to vibrate loose over time, but at the same time, I don't want to tighten it too much and crush the switch. The next thing to do is install the handlebar end caps into the ends of the handlebars. These just line up to the ends and push in place. As you can see, we've got a two-part epoxy that we need to mix together. Now what I can do is push this sort of in the middle and it'll form a cup. And then we can use that to stir up the epoxy. Once I start mixing the epoxy, I've only got a few minutes to work, so I've got to work fast. Well, as you can see, this epoxy is already kind of hard and really not usable. This kit was actually a year old and sitting in a coworker's shed all summer, so I think this stuff is kind of spoiled. I'm going to have to find something else to use. Unfortunately, I had a hiccup with my camera and lost some footage, so I can't show you the attaching of the actual hand grips in real time. Now, because I couldn't use the epoxy that came with the kit, I ended up using this stuff that I had in my drawer. Now, this stuff is very similar to what is supplied with the Ariens kit. All you have to do is push in on the plunger, it squirts out equal amounts of hardener and epoxy, and then I just used the little stick that came with the kit to stir it up so it was consistent, and then I spread just a small amount on the handlebar up on the top, And then I took the hand grip and pushed it on and kind of twisted it back and forth to make sure that the epoxy was spread around in there a bit. Then I let it cure for 24 hours, and now as you can see, it's on there nice and solid. Now, one thing to note about orientation of the grips, you can see the wire exit is sort of facing inboard on both of the grips. Then I took the wire and routed it underneath the dashboard and away from the actuating levers here so that it won't get bound or pinched in there when these things are actuated. Now I'll grab the wiring harness that was supplied with the kit and I'll plug it in at the engine side first. I'll tuck this back in behind the starter where it was, and then I'll grab this clip and put this in the hole on the frame of the machine. Next, I'll loosely route the wiring harness along the handlebar and under the control panel for now. So the first connection I'll make is the shortest pigtail on the wiring harness, and that one will go to the right side grip heater. So next I'll plug in the headlight adapter. This is the end that goes into the back of the headlight, and the clip points towards the right. And then the other end of the pigtail plugs into the connector on the wiring harness. Next, I'll connect up these spade connectors to the contacts on the switch. Now it shouldn't matter which lug goes on which contact. Next, I can connect the plug from the left side grip into the remaining receptacle on the wiring harness here. I also want to make sure that as I route the wires, they don't interfere with any of the controls or springs or levers underneath the dashboard. There are some push pins on the wiring harness that are supposed to go into some holes above the headlight. I don't see those on my unit, so I'm just going to neaten up these wires and use the supplied zip ties to hold them up underneath the dashboard and out of the way. Now that I've got everything connected up, I can attach the two zip ties on the side of the harness. So the epoxy cured overnight in the cellar and the grips feel nice and tight. I'm ready to fire up the machine and test them out. Now, I haven't gotten any snow yet here in Connecticut, but I've run the machine around my yard a few times and these grips are working great. I think once it is time to do some snow blowing out here, these grips are going to be a welcome addition to this snowblower. Now, one thing I was curious about, and you guys might be too, is whether or not the light would stay on if the grips were off. And the answer is yes. If I shut the grips off, the light does still work. So on those warmer evenings when I don't need the grips, I can turn them off and keep the light on to light the way. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.